ESBR Boxing, myself and Paul Kelly, we are back. That means only one thing. That means we're in preview mode. But before we get into preview mode, what I'm going to say to everyone out there in this sort of YouTube land, TikTok land, wherever it is, please like and subscribe this video. Subscribe to the channel. Obviously, we've got other big fight breakdowns and previews and reviews of all the upcoming cards. So check those out on the channel. Like and subscribe. Give us all a boost. Enjoy some more fabulous content. But Paul, we are here obviously in preview mode, and we are previewing fight between Erislandy, Lara, and Danny Garcia. Now, obviously, both of these names well known in boxing circles. So we don't want to spend too much time in the breakdown of both their records. I suppose that what we like to do is, we like to come out of the blocks hard and sort of discuss, I suppose, some of the sort of more pertinent themes or the sort of alternative themes coming to the fight. And the first one, Paul, I want to ask you actually is this about this fight: is this? Look, I mean, Erislandy Lara, 41 years old, obviously. A guy's been around, 36 fights on his record. Danny Garcia, again, another guy who's obviously been around, 40 fights on his record. Is this for you a question of who's the freshest at this point or who's least, least past their best? Is that how you're going to before we come to a prediction, is this how you're going to sort of sum this fight up and pick who you think is going to win?
Yeah, thanks, mate, for that eloquent breakdown and intro. Yeah, in a way, I think it is a question of who's fresher. One's 41 and what? Garcia's 37 maybe or something like that. But in activity as well, I looked at Danny Garcia hasn't fought in over 2 years now since he fought at light middleweight against Jose Benavidez in his last fight. First time up at 160 as well. So as much as I say it is a question of who's fresher, and like supposedly, both are probably past their peak, let's be honest, just happens. It's no slight on either of them. They probably are both past the best, but who's more past their best? Who's least past their best? Who still has more in their arsenal? Yeah, I think it's kind of I think that's a good point. I think that is probably a question I'm looking at. However, I'm also looking at, Lara's fought at middleweight for a good chunk of his career. He was light middle and now middle. Whereas Danny Garcia was all the way down at he was super lightweight before then welterweight, obviously, and super welter before now making his 160 debut. So yes, as much as it is down to who's fresher, I think size here could play a factor. I know there's only, if you actually look at the dimensions on paper, there's only 1 inch in the height. Erislandy Lara does have like a 7-inch reach advantage though, which could be quite big. Both have a good knockout record, but I think Lara is more seasoned up at middleweight, for sure. So I think that'll come into the equation as well, and not just be a matter of who's fresher.
Yeah, I think you make apologies to everyone viewing there, watching my sort of COVID breakdown, but I think you make a very valid point about activity. I suppose one thing I look at it as well is obviously, Lara's recent fights, they have finished early. So again, I'm looking at if he'd have gone the distance, maybe at 41 years old, I'm looking at him going, I actually sort of tested more recently the distance, but he obviously hasn't. So it's an interesting sort of proposition to see how much he's also got fitness-wise, I suppose, at this stage. Let's focus a little bit on Danny Garcia, Paul. Obviously, you mentioned they're not fought for some time. But obviously, already a two-weight world champion. And the question really, I suppose, for me that I want to ask you, obviously had that fight, obviously welter with Errol Spence as well, which was for the IBF and WBC titles. But what I want to ask you is, do you think that Danny Garcia can become a three-weight world champion? And equally, if you look at the middleweight division, obviously you've got Lara as champion, you've got Janabek, Carlos Adames as the other champions. Do you think that Lara, possibly even beyond this fight, if he wins well, he could actually unify up at middleweight? Or do you think that time is not necessarily on his side?
Yeah, two interesting questions. I mean, definitely. I think the Garcia one, keep it relatively short and sweet, and without being, I don't want to be disrespectful, but I see no world at all in which Danny Garcia becomes a three-weight world champion, to be honest. So take of that what you will, but I try not to give my prediction away, but kind of basically already have. But no, I mean, in the future, I just don't think he's big enough, mate, to be a real top middleweight. Age isn't on his side. Activity's not on his side. Size isn't on his side to be a fully fledged middleweight. I think when you're coming up against, say he was to fight Janabek, for example, a name that you mentioned, right? Say he was to beat Lara and he fought Janabek next in a unification. The size difference is almighty there. It's a big ask. I don't see it becoming a three-weight world champion, Danny Garcia. Fair play to him, he's already a two-weight world champion, as you mentioned. Whether or not Lara can unify at 160, he could certainly fight in unification fights. He's certainly still an elite level fighter, but again, it depends. Who are the other champions? Adames and Janabek has 2 belts. Janabek Alim Kanuli Sorry for butchering his name. Like, he's a serious operator. Let's be honest. He's a serious operator. If I was Erislandy Lara, I probably wouldn't want anything to do with that, to be quite honest. But I could see a world in which Lara at least fights and competes for another belt, whether it be Adamez's belt or whether there's 3 belts on the line if he was to fight Janabek next, or whatever. Whether or not he wins it, may a completely different story though. So I'm going to say no, I don't see Lara picking up more belts at 160.
Yeah, you know what, I actually it's not the sort of controversy that a lot of these videos need to fly necessarily, but I actually totally agree with you, Paul. I think I don't see Danny Garcia. We're not going to picks here, I suppose, but I don't see Danny Garcia becoming a 3-weight world champion. I suppose even if he loses to Lara, which we might be suggesting he might, how would he be able to climb the summit again and then fight another one of the champions and then get another opportunity and then prevail in that? I don't see that happening. Lara again, 41 years old. I see him being a live opponent. For fighters up in middleweight, absolutely. But like you say, do I pick him to beat Alec Markan-Luli? No, I don't, frankly. So I think there's fights for him at middleweight, but I don't necessarily see him beating Janabek, quite frankly. So I don't think there's a chance he can unify either. And he would, I suppose, you have one shot at it, essentially. You basically come through this fight, have one shot at Janabek and see what you can do, but I don't see him winning. But let's go into. There's one quick question, Paul, I'm going to ask you, and then before we come to predictions, is we've talked about the age, we've talked about the activity, but do you actually see a world where the loser of this fight retires?
I mean, I do actually. It's a bit of a brutal question, and without being too brutal in my answer, I think I did see a snippet of an interview where Danny Garcia was kind of talking about whether win or lose, this could potentially be his last fight. See, when you're thinking about retirement, you may as well have already retired, in my opinion, in most cases. How often have we seen fighters being like, oh, I'll throw one final throw of the dice, but in the back of their mind, they're probably sitting thinking, I could have my feet up on a beach in Barbados here. Do you know what I mean? Some of them might have already mentally checked out, whether or not Danny Garcia has, but I just thought it would be worth mentioning. So if he's to lose, I see him retiring. And equally, to be honest with you, mate, if you're Lara and you lose this fight, you're thinking, oh, I'm losing to Danny Garcia, who's not a middleweight. Let's be honest. How am I going to come back now? Where's the road back to becoming champion? I think it could be a long road back for him. So without going again, as we like to call it, full McKendry, I do think it's very realistic and possible that the loser of this fight, either way, does retire. Yep.
Yeah. No, I think Danny Garcia for me definitely will retire if he loses. I totally agree with that. I think Lara's one of those guys that will just fight possibly until he's 100 years old. So maybe we'll see him drop down levels of fighting, different sort of cards. But yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing retirement for him if he did lose. But Paul, we're now into predictions. Let's keep it nice and short and sweet, I suppose. We've fleshed out the prediction video with some great topics here, but let's go to predictions. So, Paul, with 30 seconds or fewer, who wins this fight, Paul, and how and why?
Erislandy Lara will win this fight, and I'm going to say that he's the first man to stop Danny Garcia. Yes, Danny Garcia's only real defeats are to Sean Porter, Keith Thurman, and Errol Spence, as you mentioned. But I think Erislandy Lara wins this. The size will play a big factor. I think maybe down the stretch he could get Garcia out of there. I'll go Lara stoppage round 8 to 10.
Oh, delicious. Well, Paul, I'm actually going to go with Lara as well. I think he's going to stop Garcia as well, but only because I think Garcia's inactivity. Like you said, the talk about retirement. I'm not necessarily convinced he'll have enough the size as well. So I'm actually going to go similar round range as well. I'm going to go late-ish onto the fight. I think we'll get to him down the stretch somewhere 9 to 12. Lara victory. So we're in unison, Paul. We have agreed. We are unified there in our viewpoint, guys. Let us know what you think in the comments. Whether the loser of this fight will retire, whether Garcia can become a 3-weight world champion, whether you think Lara can unify. And also whether it just comes down simply at this stage to who's the fresher man. As we said at the top of the video, please like and subscribe. And as always, thank you, Paul. And thank you very much, guys, for watching.
Cheers, mate. All the best.